14 and 15, they would see the LH surge, and that would be the time to attempt to become pregnant, or the time to attempt to abstain so as not to become pregnant. Well, obviously, we have a completely different story in males. And in keeping, maintaining perspective, remembering how the notes are laid out, we're going gland by gland by gland. Now's not the time to talk about estrogen and progesterone, because we're talking about the pituitary gland. We'll talk about estrogen and progesterone and testosterone when we get to the gonads. So in males, it's pretty simple. FSH stimulates spermatogenesis. Starts with puberty, ends at death. End of story. Spermatogenesis occurs in the seminiferous tubules. Seminiferous tubules are in the testicles. We'll look histologically at the seminiferous tubules when we're talking about the gonads. Right now we're talking about the anterior pituitary. LH in males stimulates production of testosterone. Testosterone is obviously produced in the testicles as well, but not the seminiferous tubules. Testosterone is produced in the interstitial cells. Of the testes. We'll look at the interstitial cells when we are talking about the gonads. So when you read what's in the lecture notes for FSH, that's pretty much it in the male. It's in the female where things are a little more complicated. And LH is pretty much what the notes say, simply adding the interstitial cells of the male. And what are they in the female? What's the notes say stimulates gonad secretion of sex steroids. What cells in the female produce the sex steroids? It's not a trick question. You all know. The follicle cells. Yeah, the follicle cells. All right, that takes us to number 3, TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. This one you know because we've used it as an example for weeks now. Again, going back to the diencephalon when we first talked about the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. So TSH is purely tropic. It tells the thyroid gland to make thyroxine. Number 4, ACTH, tells the adrenal cortex to make cortisol or cortisone or hydrocortisone. They're the same thing for our purposes. That's like talking about epinephrine versus norepinephrine. They're the same thing for our purposes. MSH, now that's the one, remember, may not actually come from the anterior pituitary. MSH may come from this intermediate lobe of the pituitary rather than the anterior pituitary. Don't agree on it. Your notes point out that dopamine inhibits MSH. It's interesting because we associate dopamine with inhibiting motor movement, allowing for fine motor skills and being short and or low concentration in Parkinson's. It occurred to me sometime between Tuesday and there was something I neglected to share with you regarding oxytocin. We'll flip back in your notes to the oxytocin discussion. So you've got stimulates milk ejection. And what's that called in humans? Letdown reflex. We talked about the Australian mammal with that little platypus. We're still smiling from that discussion. What did you look it up? Was what I told you correct, or was I making up a story? Because very often I make all this stuff up. It's interesting. You come to my metabolism, my Krebs cycle and all lecture in 201. You come in the morning, you come back in the afternoon, and it'll be totally different. That's because nobody really understands it, so we just make a bunch of crap up. I mean, who understands? Oh, I'm kidding. It's very simple, actually. What else did I tell you about oxytocin? Stimulates uterine contractions, and I probably mentioned Pitocin, the drug used to accelerate labor. Okay, the third thing, the thing that I don't think I told you, if I did, cut me off. But the third thing about oxytocin, and this is in males and females, oxytocin is the feel-good hormone. So oxytocin levels rise after an orgasm. All right, back to page 20, back to the anterior pituitary. So we've got a couple of anterior pituitary hormones that are considered non-tropic. In other words, they're end products. They actually do something. One is growth hormone. Growth hormone stimulates growth. So it's very important when we're young and growing. Once we're grown, growth hormone is important in maintaining the body structure to include wound healing. Now, if you think about growth, deal with the skeletal system. So all of your bone physiology from 201 would come in, the osteoblast, in particular, absorbing calcium. The other aspect of growth, you've got muscular growth. And keep in mind that when muscles grow, it's not mitosis. It's hypertrophy. So muscles get bigger because the individual cells get bigger, not because of mitosis. If something grows through cell division, it's called hyperplasia. If something grows because cells get bigger, it's called hypertrophy. So your muscle cells are not mitotically active, they're just getting bigger. So growth hormone is stimulating the skeletal system, stimulating the muscular system. We've also got prolactin as a non-tropic hormone. That one came up on Tuesday just to contrast it with oxytocin. Remember the P in prolactin reminds us of the P in the word production. All right, letter C under the anterior pituitary. We have some very, very interesting chemicals that the anterior pituitary produces. They're certainly chemical messengers. They're not considered hormones. The only one of those that I'm concerned with is beta-endorphin. So everything else, the enkephalins, the other endorphins, whatever, read about it if you're interested in it. Beta-endorphin is our naturally occurring morphine. So you make a morphine-like compound in your body. Whether you want to think about morphine or you want to think about Vicodin, which is, of course, a brand name, so don't think about brand names. Percocet don't, because that's a brand name. Whether you want to think about morphine or hydrocodone or oxycodone, you make that stuff in your body. And it's called beta endorphin. When you're in pain, you produce beta endorphin. Now, very often you don't produce enough, so you take more. Okay? But sometimes after an accident, people will go through a period of excruciating pain and then it begins to subside. That's because their beta endorphin level is rising. Sometimes after a traumatic experience, people aren't in pain initially. That's because their beta endorphin level is so high. Beta endorphin begins to fall off and they're aware of the pain and they need drugs. I think we're always producing beta endorphin. It's been postulated that if we weren't producing beta endorphin, that movement would hurt. I don't know. Are you going to test it? Yeah.
Doesn't adrenaline have to do with the lack of pain too?
Absolutely. The fight or flight response is very important in the lack of pain. They isolated beta endorphin from some rodent. I don't remember if it was a rat or a mouse, but I believe it was one of those. And they administered it to heroin addicts who were in withdrawal, and it relieved their withdrawal symptoms. That's how we came to understand beta endorphin. The fact that we produce this endogenous morphine-like compound is the basis of addiction to opiates. If you think about Chapter 1, homeostasis, and negative feedback, if you have a system that produces a product, so your refrigerator produces cold air, and the cold air inhibits the production of the cold air until the temperature rises, and then more cold air is in, of course, negative feedback, whether it's your refrigerator, your oven, your cruise control, your furnace, your air conditioning system. You remember Chapter 1, classic negative feedback. If the system is the anterior pituitary and the product is beta endorphin, what happens to the anterior pituitary's production of beta endorphin if you're taking oxycodone? You stop it. Well, that's okay because you're taking it. But let's say you take oxycodone 5 or 6 times a day for 3 or 4 years, and then you stop taking it. What are you going to feel like? You're going to feel like crap. You're going to feel like death. Now, sadly, you won't die. You'll just wish you would. You might be interested to know that withdrawal from alcohol, barbiturates, and benzodiazepines will kill you. You have to be medically monitored and detoxed, or you will die. But withdrawal from heroin or methamphetamine will not kill you. You'll just beg to die. You'll hope you die, but you won't. Nasty, nasty situation. Don't go there. But yeah, this is the basis of addiction, whether it's the heroin addict, the person digging fentanyl patches out of the trash can and chewing them, the person abusing Percocet and Vicodin. You stop the body's natural production of beta endorphin. The withdrawal that one goes through is you're waiting, once you quit taking this, you're waiting on the body to start producing the beta endorphin again. Some people say, and I promise some people say it's possible to take high doses of abuse doses, not what your doctor will give you. Your doctor knows what he or she's doing. But some people say it's possible to take this stuff for so long at such high levels that the anterior pituitary forgets how to make beta endorphin and can never learn how to make it again. That's the